Have you ever wondered how to keep a consistent brand voice across all of your platforms, whether it's your blog, on your YouTube channel, whether it is social media posting, and how you can use AI to do that? In today's video, we're going to show you how to take your existing content that you have created over time and put it in as an input to where AI will then use that to generate you a tone of voice that can be used going forward. What this helps with is ensuring that every time the AI that you use, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity or whoever, whatever system that you're using, it's able to generate new content for you using the same type of tone of voice that you have in your previous content. This should help you reduce how much time it takes you to go in and edit it. I don't know about you, but when I first started using AI, I would have it generate stuff for me and I liked the output, but it didn't sound like me. So that's where this type of a solution is going to come in to help you. So what we have here is this is broken down to pulling information out of Airtable. If we go over and look at our Airtable example, I have a bunch of different examples. So these were pulled from social media, LinkedIn, Instagram. It was pulled from some blog posts or some LinkedIn articles that were written. And then it goes in here as the source file that our AI automation is then going to use. It's going to go through a series of different checks where we're using ChatGPT to generate a overall Google Doc at the end that's going to be your tone of voice that you can use going forward. So we're going to start off with looking for vocab and word choice, grammatical patterns, punctuation, sentence structure, rhetorical devices, paragraph structure, tone and mood, coherence and cohesion, idiosyncrasies and quirks, and figurative languages. So what does this mean? A lot of times when you speak or when you write, you have tendency to use certain words, right? You'll look at people like Alex Hormozy, and he expressly explains that he tries to dumb everything down, or he tries to speak at an elementary school level so that people understand, no matter who he's talking to, whether they're a genius or whether they're a child, they can understand what he's explaining. So that's what we're going to figure out here together, and we're going to build the entire scenario together today so that you can follow along and build it with us. So two things we're using is make.com. If you're not familiar with make.com, this is a automation tool set, but it's built out to be no code. So instead of having to go in and build out all the API things, we can just select modules that have been previously created by other people or by make.com in order to connect to the API backend of all of these tools that we're going to be using. So today I'm going to be using Airtable, and both of what I'm using today, both Airtable and make.com have free versions, so you're able to use them in the free version. However, you cannot use API calls or webhooks in Airtable for free. So this, I'm going to be doing it in a way to where it doesn't cost anything. Airtable is set up in a scenario to where we're not using anything. So we're going to go ahead and build out a new version. All right, so let's create a fresh Airtable here. Down here to create, and we're going to start from scratch. And so we had who. That's the first one. We can leave this as name, right? Who's the person that we're using? Single line text, that's fine. Next, we have tone of voice, and this is going to be the input that we put in there. So let's go ahead and edit this field, and we're going to call this tone of voice. Put in like a speaker here. Tone of voice. Long text, right? The difference between short text or single line, you can only use one line. Long text is when you're putting in multiple things, or like paragraphs and paragraphs or pages of text that just going to go in there to it. Next, we have created time and last modified time. So these are important because, and we don't need assignee, so we can get rid of that one. We also don't need status right now. We're going to do created time. So you can type this in, or if you don't type it in, it's just going to give it the same name. So created time and then last modified time. So these two are important because when we start using this scenario here, let me go ahead and run it. This is coming off of here. It's already run this before and generated these files for me, but you'll see when it runs, it didn't complete. And the reason for that is nothing new has happened. So when we look at this Airtable scenario, we're saying The trigger field is going to be the last modified time. So it's looking for the fact that something changed in this Airtable tab, in the table under Airtable, under this base. So we have table 1 under the base build tone of voice. And the last modified is what we're looking for. The label field that we're going to be pulling from is tone of voice. And we're giving it a limit of 10. So let's go ahead and copy this over. Let's go ahead and add this in. So Airtable, we're going to do watch records. And then we're going to connect it to our Airtable. Now, right now, I don't have this titled anything. So let's go back here and give this a title. We're going to call it tone of voice generate. And we'll say build together 2025. And let's make this a teal color here. Boom, nice and bright. All right, so this is here. And the reason we're doing that is so that we can find it in make.com. So we're going to go here under base. It's already connected. If you don't have your Airtable connected yet, you're just going to tell it you want a connection type, and you can do OAuth. And once you do this, it's going to have you log in to Airtable. So it'll pop up with a new window. Go ahead and walk through this real quick, and I'll stop it before I get there. But it's going to pop up with a new window. It's going to ask you to log in. It's also going to ask you to add a base, right? So I'm already logged into Airtable, so it didn't ask me to do this. But when you have this, you're going to have to assign your workspaces. So if you want to, you can go through and say, in this one, I'm only wanting a specific base to be used. For me, I just say all current and future bases in my workspace, and that's it. So give it access to that, and that's what it can search from. So then I have to cancel this because it's trying to add a new connection. So we're going to use the existing connection that's there, and then in the base here, it's going to search and it'll pull back all of the existing bases inside of your Airtable. So we're going to search for the one we just created, which was tone of voice generate build together 2025. So once that pulls in, then you have the ability to choose from the tables. So when we look in here, table 1, we can change this to, let's rename this to tone of voice input content. And even though it pulled it down before, it's showing table 1. If you click on this little refresh button here, it's going to pull that data again, tone of voice input content. There you go. So we're going to grab that, and our trigger field is going to be last modified because we only want things to be pulled if it was modified. So we don't want it to go through once we've created tone of voice for, let's say we're doing this for multiple people, or maybe you have an agency and you want to use this to generate tone of voice for people. You don't want it to keep running the same people over and over. Once you already have a tone of voice for them, you don't need to worry about it anymore. So we're going to use tone of voice as that label field, and let's set this to 1 for now. We don't need to have it run 10 things. So it's going to ask you, when do you want to start? Forever. If you just do all, it's going to do whatever you have. If you say from now on, it's looking from this time that we just started and going forward. So we're going to click on that because realistically, we don't have anything here. If you already had a list of people that you'd put in there, you would want to say all. So then that way it uses anything from the past. So now we have this. We can go ahead and run this module. So you have two options. If you want to run everything, you click on run once, it will run that scenario. You'll see here that nothing came back from it because it's empty. So it didn't have anything to pull. You also have the ability to right click on it and say run this module only. So in some scenarios, when you have multiple things connected to one another, running the entire scenario is a waste of your tokens on ChatGPT or Claude or any of the other systems. And you only want to run one thing so you can pull something back. So that's where you're going to click it and do it that way. So let's put something in here. We'll go ahead and grab the tone of voice from my previous one. Let's open this up so I can copy all of that and put this in. Now, you'll see that there are all these other ones up here. We don't need any of these. So we're going to add in a new one here. As soon as I click that, it added in the created time, but nothing's been modified yet. All right, so that's been updated. And then we're going to go get rid of these previous fields because we don't need them. They're blank. There's no reason for them to be there. So it's there. So let's go back here and say run once. Now it pulled back my information, my name, and the tone of voice. So if we click this, we see all of that information there, which that's what we're using for this. We needed to pull that information in. All right, so let's move this over here a little bit. Next thing we're going to do is this vocab and word choice. So I'm just going to copy these in here, and then I'll walk through them as we build them together here in this other, in the build together one. So we're going to paste this here. We'll connect that. And inside of the vocab and word choice, we're using ChatGPT. So similar to the Airtable, if you don't have an existing connection here, you're just going to click on this option up here. You'll click on add. You're going to have to log into your ChatGPT. So let's talk about that real quick because you need your API key. So to get that, you're going to go to platform.openai.com. So you go to platform, you click on the little gear icon, and then under API keys, you're going to grab your key, right? And if you don't have one, you can go ahead and create a new secret key. It's going to give you the key, which you're going to then put back in here. You'll give the API key, give it a name so that you can use it for something, and then click on save. And then what it's going to do from there is going to open up what you have available. So if you don't have API, you are going to have to pay for this. So if you go under billing for API, you can add a credit balance to your account. I usually just have it set to add $15 whenever the balance gets below 5. Realistically, this takes forever to use up these things. Now, if you have something running every minute, it's running a GPT query for you, then you can probably go through it relatively quickly. But for me, I think I've put money into this maybe twice in the last year. So realistically, this will last you for a long time. Also, I think GPT or ChatGPT and Perplexity gives you like some money up front to test through it so that while you're getting comfortable with using it, you're not blowing through your money because there is a little bit of a learning curve with utilizing these, especially an API. So from there, select model. On this one, we were using a create completion. So let's talk about that real quick, right? Because if you're creating a new module in here, you're going to click on OpenAI, which is ChatGPT, Whisper, and Dolly. So from here, you get to choose what type of thing you're doing. Are you messaging an assistant? Are we creating a completion, which is basically the same thing of going to chat, OpenAI, and then adding something here. So creating a completion, we're sending a prompt to it. It's going to give us something back. So that's what we're doing. But there's all these other things that you can use with it. Right? You can generate an image. You can create a translation so that we'll take an audio file, translate it into something else, or you can translate it into different languages. You can have it output as text. So for us, we're doing a create completion, right? And then this create completion module is being used to generate or to review all of this content that's here and look for vocabulary and word choice based on my previous posts, my previous content that I've put in there. What type of a vocabulary do I normally use? So we're going to set this up as O1 mini. O1 is the newest one. I really like the way it puts information out. The other thing is with mini, it's for less complicated and less like resource intensive outputs. So just searching for vocab, it's not that big of a deal. You can use some of the older ones, but what I have found is if you don't remember that you've done this and you use an older model, sometimes whenever they sunset those models, your entire scenario will break because these things are using a specific model. So also look out for emails from them because they'll tell you when they're going to start pulling things out. When you do O1 preview, or if you're actually in GPT here and you have O1, that is for more advanced reasoning. So it takes longer for it to do the research because it's really digging in with trying to find that solution for you. So then we're going to click on here. Normally there would be like an option right here when you're starting from scratch. It'll say add message and you have to choose the role. So if you have a user, which is what we're going to do, just a user asking GPT a question versus having an assistant. Let's talk about what assistants are for a second real quick. So back in that platform.openai, you have the ability to take and put stuff in here, and then you're just messaging that assistant, right? So essentially you provide instructions to ChatGPT of how this assistant operates, what it does, what it's for. If you want it to search through files, like you can provide files that are relevant to this assistant specifically. All of that information can be stored on there. And then what you're doing is just referencing that assistant. In this scenario, we're just going to tell it Specifically, we're a user, we're asking you to do something. So for this one, because we're looking for vocab and word choice, we're going to say analyze this text and create a tone of voice guideline. Provide us back with a detailed guideline for each element, including relevant examples from the given text. So that's the text that's coming in. It's imperative that your guidelines read as instructions to a language model to emulate this style exactly. For example, when writing sentences, use active voice most of the time, such as he gladly painted the house. Feel free to include examples from the written text of what is good and what bad looks like. Be as helpful as possible and detailed. Keep the response to 350 words maximum. Do not include any additional explanation or text. The reason we have to put this in here is because a lot of times ChatGPT will give you stuff ahead of it and below it saying, this is an example of blah, blah, blah. And at the end of it, it'll say notes, don't forget to use X, Y, and Z. We don't want those because that would be put into our output or our Google document at the end, which we don't want that to happen. So we just want the tone of voice for vocab and word choice. Analyze the given text, focusing on the following: vocabulary and word choice. Analyze the writer's use of unique, specialized, or repetitive words and phrases. So when you have somebody who says things regularly, they continue to use the same type of word. We want to be able to identify that word choice so that we can replicate it in the future. Identify the frequency and diversity of the writer's vocabulary. Examine the use of jargon, slang, or colloquialisms. All right. So this is if you have the user is in fitness, but they do CrossFit. So they use words like WOD, or they use words like squat clean, power clean, deadlifts. Like they use those types of jargon. So we're looking for that. Determine the writer's preference for simple or complex words. So is this person using detailed college level words, or are they using middle school, elementary level words? Look for distinctive and unusual word choices. So if people have a tendency to using something weird, you want to make sure you're using something like that, and assess the reading age level required to understand the vocabulary used. These as instructions and include no additional text. Now, you may see that and think, you already said that once before. There are sometimes you need to repeat this because the GPT or the language model will miss stuff. So right here, it's saying we're going to reference the text that they're using. We're going to have to pull it from over here. So we already ran this once and it gave us this tone of voice. So that's what we're going to input there as the text. So once this has been run, then you can just click on this and it uses that variable as the input. So if we run these two, click on once, pulled that one out. However, nothing changed since the last time. So we have to go in here. So we have to go in here and make a change. All it has to happen is that this time needs to change. So we can do something as simple as saying, get rid of in my name and then put it back in there. Watch, then this last modified time will change in just a second. So that changed. So now we go here and we run this. It's going to pull that. It's going to send it out to ChatGPT. It's going to look for this information to pull it back down. And then the output from that, it gave us information. So we have choices, one message, and then the content. This is what it gave us back. Use motivational and action-oriented words. Instructions, select words that inspire action and convey determination, such as push, challenge, keep moving. Utilize repetitive phrases and emphasis. Instructions. A good example is keep moving. A bad example is stay active. Include personal and relatable vocabulary. Instructions share personal experiences and emotions using first-person language to connect with the audience. A good example would be I'm sore from doing the Murph challenge. A bad example, participants often feel sore after workouts, right? So this is the output from that. Now we're going to start putting the rest of these things together. And now listen, if you're looking for the ability to take this information and just start faster, if you join my school community, I have all of this stuff in here. You'll be able to log in. I have everything in my school community, so you would be able to log in, go under automate everything, and you will find the automations here. And then once you go into it, you're able to just download these blueprints. Find the blueprint you're looking for, copy, import, and then you have the entire blueprint in order to use it. So it would speed you up significantly if you're looking for the ability to do that. We definitely have that option there. So let's copy this module, paste it in here, and we're gonna connect it off of here as well. Now, you may be wondering, what's the difference of just having this here? You click on auto align, it'll make everything connect together versus this other one. If you move them up and down versus having them side by side, it gives you the ability to keep things on one screen a little bit easier. And you can zoom in and zoom out on this as well. This next one is grammatical patterns. We're gonna use the same text. We've already got it connected here, but same thing as you build new ChatGPT, it's gonna ask you to connect which connection do you wanna use. It's also gonna ask you which model. Choose the model that you're using. And for this one, we're going to analyze this text and create a tone of voice for vocabulary and word choice. Now, this is actually wrong. So we're going to change this to for radical patterns. Please provide a detailed guideline. It's imperative. It's here we're looking for. So when we get down here, analyze the given text, focusing on the following grammatical patterns, identify the writer's use of specific grammatical structures such as passive voice, complex tenses, and particular parts of speech. Analyze the writer's use of verb tense and consistency in tense usage. Example, or examine the writer's use of singular and plural nouns as well as pronouns. Look for any recurring grammatical errors or deliberate deviations from standard grammar. So if people have a tendency, especially in nowadays, of using slang or using a different way of saying something, we want to make sure that our tone of voice is able to mimic that and not accidentally put it in there in a way that we never would say it. So you'll see that it's giving us the previous option here as the input, but we still want to use this original text as the input for it. We're not going to run this again until we get everything together, but basically it's just going to follow down this line, right? We're going to go, it's going to pull from Airtable, vocab and word choice, grammatical patterns. And I'm just going to copy the rest of these in here now, and then we will go through them one at a time and what they're for. Paste them in, like this. Connected together. Let's go through one at a time. Punctuation, very similar to the previous one, except now we're focusing on what type of punctuation do we use? Do we have regular punctuation? Do we have regular errors of forgetting to put space or periods in? Are we looking for commas and semicolons? You'll see that this beginning part is pretty much the same for all of them. Analyzing the text, keeping it 350 words or less. Provide detailed guidelines with the given text that's provided. For example, when writing in sentences. So this stuff is all the same, but down here we're analyzing the given text, focusing on punctuation. Analyze the writer's use of punctuation marks such as commas, semicolons, dashes, and parentheses. Reason for this is sometimes we have a tendency of using the wrong type of punctuation, but we do it on a regular basis, so we want our tone of voice to match what we do. Determine if the writer favors certain punctuation marks over others. Examine how the writer uses punctuation to create rhythm, emphasis, or clarity. And lastly, we're going to look for any unusual or idiosyncrasy punctuation patterns. So like I just said, if we have a tendency of using something incorrectly, we still want it to be done that way because realistically, that's how we would do it. We're going to make sure we're pulling from that, the first module back there, tone of voice coming out of the Airtable. Sentence structure. I'm going to see it's the same. I'm going to go ahead and change this first part because chances are it's going to be messed up again. Yep. Sentence structure. So keep the words 350 or less. All of this is the same. Analyze the given text for the following. Sentence structure and length. Examine complexity, variety, and average length of the writer's sentences. Identify the writer's use of simple, compound, complex, or compound complex sentences. Analyze the writer's use of sentence fragments, run-on sentences, or varied sentence beginnings. We're going to calculate the average word per sentence, identify the percentage of short sentences and long sentences, which we calculate less than 10 words or more than 30 words. Write these as instructions, include no additional text. Again, we don't want it to put stuff in there that when this is fed into a ChatGPT or a Claude as a prompt and we're telling it use this tone of voice, that it happens to add those instructions in there, which may be confusing for that GPT model at that time. Rhetorical devices. One of the things I want to talk about here that I have not hit on is the max completion tokens. Leaving it set to 0 right now, which means it's just going to go for the maximum. But if you wanted things to not use up too many tokens, you can set how many tokens you want to use here so that it doesn't go past a certain amount. Now, in the past, there were issues of if you were asking for something really long and you gave it a max token, and it went past that, it would just shut off at that. So it didn't shorten it to make it fit in there. Be careful using that if you're asking for super long outputs, that you're providing enough tokens that it's not going to just get shut off in the middle of doing it. So this one is rhetorical devices. We're adding this. So basically, what is the rhetoric that's being used in here? Analyze the given text for the following. Recognize the writer's use of literary techniques such as metaphors, similes, alliteration, and repetition. Identify the writer's use of rhetoric, rhetorical questions, irony, or hyperbole. Examine the writer's use of analogies, anecdotes, and examples to illustrate points. Look for any distinctive or recurring rhetorical devices in the writer's work. So this is basically the same as the other ones, but now we're focusing just on this one area. All right, look for something that happens regularly so that we can repeat it when we need to. 6, we're looking at paragraph structure. And one of the things I didn't talk about here, and I'll go over in just a minute. Again, those are all the same, but on this one, we're analyzing for the following: paragraph structure. Examine how the writer organizes their paragraphs, including their length, topic, sentences. Analyze the writer's use of deductive or inductive reasoning in paragraph development. Analyze the writer's use of chronological or spatial or emphatic order in paragraph arrangement. So do they put things in a certain order, or does it just flow as they look at it? Look for any unique or reoccurring patterns in the writer's paragraph structure. So do they always use 4 sentences, and sometimes they use 3? Do they start with 4 and then they move to 5 and then they move to 3 at the end? Those types of things. We're looking for repetitiveness. So we're going to go back and pull from this original tone of voice file again. And something here that I was just going to tell you, you'll notice that all of these are named here, right? When you actually create a ChatGPT completion, all it's going to say here is OpenAI, ChatGPT, Whisper, and Dolly, because those are the different functions you can use. If you right click on this and you go down to rename, you're able to put in, this makes it easier to remember what this is for. Okay. So you're able to rename it, and it still shows you that it's a create completion module, but now you have a name for it. So why does that matter? Let's look at this. I'm going to delete that one. Go back down here to paragraph structure. When we click on this and we're pulling from a previous module as reference, right? When we added this tone of voice here, it's going to show you all of these things. And if you have 15 different ChatGPT functions in here and all of them are named create a completion prompt, GPT, Dolly, and Whisper, like it's hard for you to remember which is what's for what. So naming these properly and making sure that it makes sense what you're naming it for will make it a lot easier for when you're ready to go back and use it in a or in a future thing, which we're gonna have to do in a little bit when we make this Google Doc. Same thing here, tone and mood. We're looking for, what's the tone? Is it always a uplifting, positive? Are they regularly like pessimistic? Those are the types of things that we're looking for in this one. So we're going to go down here, analyzing the tone and mood, overall emotion, tone of the writing, such as formal, casual, humorous, or serious. Identify shifts in tone throughout the piece and examine how the writer achieves these changes. Look for any inconsistencies or contradictions in the writer's tone. And then we're going to go back and grab from there. Next, coherence and cohesion. So making everything come together. We want to make sure that We want to make sure that the overall writing, whether it's a blog post or it's a post that's going on Instagram or something, whether they're shorter or longer, we do want to make sure that it makes sense and it's not just all over the place. Pop down here, analyze. Oh, so all of this is the same. So I'm just going to skip past that because you've already seen it in the previous ones. Should be able to just copy those and reuse them. Analyze the given text, focusing on the following: overall coherence and cohesion. Analyze how well the writer's ideas flow and connect throughout the piece. Examine the writer's use of transition words, phrases, and sentences to link ideas. Identify the writer's use of repetition, parallel structure, or cohesive devices. Determine the writer's ability to maintain focus and unity throughout the piece. This is important because if you have a tendency of bouncing between ideas, we want to repeat that bouncing between ideas. And we don't want to just force everything to be perfect if your normal writing style isn't perfect that way. We're going to go ahead and save that one. Idiosyncrasies and quirks. We get down here, we're identifying any unique or unusual aspects of the writer's style, such as unconventional spellings, made up words, or distinctive phrases. Look for any recurring stylistic quirks or mannerisms, such mannerisms that set the writer apart. Analyze how these idiosyncrasies contribute to or detract from the overall effectiveness of the writing. These instructions include no additional text, right? This is so that the LLM or the language model understands what to do. And lastly, figurative language. So all of these prompts that we have in here were generated in some way through either ChatGPT or Claude. So it makes it a lot easier to be able to put this stuff in here because you tell it exactly figurative. You can tell it what you're looking for, and then it can generate this prompt for you. So you can say, create a prompt that is used for identifying figurative language in provided text, and then it will output this type of stuff for you. Identify the writer's use of figurative language, such as personification. Analyze how the writer employs figurative language to convey meaning, evoke emotions, or create vivid imagery. Examine the frequency and effectiveness of the writer's figurative language. Again, we're writing this as instructions, including no additional text. We're going to go down here and pull from the original tone of voice provided. Now, one of the things that I have not been doing as we go through this that's very important is that you click this little save button here. If you do not save in make.com and you close the window, you will lose everything. It is not Google Docs or any other thing where you have an autosave. This does not autosave. So if you leave the window or if it logs you out and you haven't saved it, you will lose whatever you've created in there. So make sure you save often. The last thing that we're going to be doing here is we're going to add a Google Docs, and we are going to create a document. We are going to give it a name, and we will name it this name, and we will say tone of voice. And then the content, I'm actually going to go copy from here because the one that we had is just broken into sections. It gives us the ability to just have that information put into this document in sections. When we come in here, the content, paste that in. Now, obviously, the only reason this worked is because these are created in the same numbers. So when we look down here, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, if this had been different, it wouldn't have pulled up. As you're creating this, let's just go ahead and do it for sake of making sure that you get to see the example of it. Or if you copy this from mine and you've created something different, let's say we clone this. Look at here. That is now number 14 for punctuation instead of number 3. And I can replace this and stick it in there if I want to. I'm not going to do it, but just as you go in here, right? Now number 14 is not showing because it's not connected anywhere. You have to connect it in line. So if I were to take this and say, put it in right there, and then click on that Google Doc again, now what we'll see is after number 3, It hasn't been run yet. That's why. That should have shown up. Let's just save it. Yep. Okay, so this is another thing that we need to talk about. You try to save something, and right now it's telling you Google Docs there's empty values. So it's saying name is empty, content is empty, even though I just put that stuff in there because I canceled instead of saving, it went away. Click on ignore warnings and save anyways. That way it still saves the scenario. So let's go back in here and then content, paste that in. So we see that here. It says 3 punctuation, it's number 4. 3 punctuation, number 14. So now it shows both of them in there. You're able to pull from that. We're going to go ahead and delete this model or this module so that it gives us back to where we were at. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this step of it so that you have an example of doing it. All we're doing is going through and linking those sections. So under vocab and word choice, this would be the header. And then we're going to go down to number 1 and we just click on the result. Now there's 2 options that you can do here, right? So you could pull from result, and you'll see in some other areas that we have to click on things like choices and then message and then content. And that would put it in like this. Right? So you'd see choices, message, content, or, and this works with ChatGPT, but not like Perplexity, you have to go find it that way. So this one, you can just click on the result and it'll put in the result there. And then for grammatical patterns, we're going to do the result for that one. And then for punctuation, result for that one. You'll see that I deleted the wrong one there, which doesn't matter. They were clones of each other. Ooh, no. So I did delete it, but it's still showing up there because it hasn't refreshed. So it would let me put that in there, but 14 is no longer there. So we're going to use number 3, sentence structure, the result from that, rhetoric, paragraph structure, tone and mood. I'm just going to add these in here so that you're able to use that as the input, all right? And lastly, figurative language. All right, so we need the name. So let's go back here. I already put that in, but I deleted it on accident. And then we'll say tone of voice document. And then we're going to save this in Drive. I already have my Drive connected, but similar, if it wasn't there, you'd have to click on add, sign in with Google, and then you'll be able to access your drives. So click on the folder location here to choose from your drive. This is on the wrong one. I have one that is connected but not loading properly. We're going to go in here. We're going to go under AI and make. And then tone of voice creation. And I just wanted to save inside of that folder. That's where I want it to go. Let's move this over here. So y'all can see it. There's nothing in the folder right now. Just refresh the page so you see nothing is there. And then we're going to click on save one more time. And then we're going to click on run once. Now, nothing has changed. So what happens? Airtable searches for it. It says nothing's changed. And it's just going to stop at that point because there's no new content there. So we're going to go in here and make a change to this real quick. And then put it back in. And then that should change from 106 of the last modified time to 128 or 129. There we go. Back to make.com, run once, and it's going to run through each of these sections. Now, there are some times where you will run into issues of you're running multiple things like this in ChatGPT, and then something fails because you hit the maximum token usage per minute or per hour. And if that happens, basically means you're sending too much API requests too fast to ChatGPT. If that happens to you, you can just try to run it again, or you can try to put in a sleep function. And as soon as this is done, I'll showcase the sleep function so you get an idea of what it is. but it won't be in there if you're using this from my school community. If you download the X or the blueprint, it won't be in there. But if you need to use it, you can. So two things that I'll show you on that for this sleep function or the break function. So it's been through all of these. Now it's creating that document. If we go here and check on in Google, Chase Upton's tone of voice document. So open this up. In Google, there's a vocab and word choice. It gives the information, grammatical patterns. So then you're able to just copy this. You're able to just take this whole file and put it in as a tone of voice whenever you're going to start writing blog posts or social media. Like when we start creating these things, and if you stick with us, the goal for this is a 90-day program where we're walking through how to put some of these things together. So like tomorrow's post will be focused on writing a blog post, and that blog post will be generated using this tone of voice. But make sure that you've completed this before you get to the blog post one. So now we have the tone of voice. Now the thing I was going to tell you about is adding in a sleep module. So under tools, sleep, this will provide a specific time to basically just rest. So by default, it's 1 second. This is between 1 and 300 seconds. That's how much you can do. Most times, I think I'm running stuff between 15 and 30 seconds. If I have a scenario where something is running, it takes longer than what I'm expecting it to, and it fails because of that. This is just going to automatically wait for that number of seconds. So in some of my earlier scenarios, when I first started building these, I would just put sleep functions in between everything. And it'd be like a 5-second sleep. It would take forever to get things through, but it was there, so it would catch things. Here's another way to do this. So if we remove this sleep, under flow control, there's a function called break, and you can attach this to any of your modules. So in a lot of the things that I do now, especially for customers, I will put this in off of every single one. So I would put one there. I would put another break function right here, attach it to that. And the goal for these, if you click on it, it's going to say automatically complete execution number of attempts. So 3 times, and wait 15 minutes in between. So what does this do? Let's say it's running through here and then it gets to this one, and for some reason it breaks. Something stops it, whether it's, you ran out of tokens, or so on some of these you'll get responses back that says basically ChatGPT is too busy right now, and the queue is overfilled and it can't complete your execution yet. So try again later. This would be able to try again later. Now, one of the things that you have to do whenever you use this, you can change this, right? You can say, wait 5 minutes, only try twice. And then it would basically error out and send you the information that there was an error, right? Same thing with the other one. Now, if we try to hit save, it's going to say this directive requires storing of incomplete executions. The reason for that is when these break modules are in here, it has to be able to save everything that was over here before and what was run into this module, and then attempt it again in 15 minutes. Because by default, the sleep module will only wait for 300 seconds. And if it's anything past that, it'll just error out. And I think that there is a total timeout for your scenario. So if it takes longer than a certain amount of time, your scenario will fail. So in order to turn this on, we're going to go here under scenario settings. And then right here where it says allow storing of incomplete executions. And we're going to change that to yes and click OK. Now you'll notice that went away. This is still here because I haven't clicked on save yet. Right? So these scenarios, if you were to put one of these break modules on every one of these things as you're using it, it would give you the ability that if you were running this in the background automatically, or something just kicked it off by itself, if something were to happen, it would just wait and then try it again and see if it works, right? And the goal would be that if any of your modules were to fail, then it would just continue working afterwards. And it wouldn't require you coming in to do error handling manually. So hopefully this makes sense to you and you're able to take this scenario and use it for creating your tone of voice, which will massively help you with making sure that all of your AI and automated generations of your social media posts, of your blog posts, have and maintain that same brand voice throughout the future. Again, if you're looking to do this faster and speed it up, you can check out my school community. The link will be down in the description. Otherwise, I hope that you're able to get through this and it makes a lot of sense and it helps you speed up your processes.